A new study released in Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences suggests we may have more in common with our best friends than just our love of shopping and sports. Just like our parents and siblings, they've found evidence that to a certain degree, the choosing of friends is influenced by our genetic makeup. Joining us today with more on this interesting topic is Dr. Karen Boyle. Hi there, Dr. Boyle. Great to see you.
Hi, Tanya.
So the old notion that you can choose your friends but not your family may in fact not be completely true according to this new study. Is that right? Tell us a little bit about it.
This study is really fun. It really questions that underlying idea, like you said, that we can choose our friends. And the question now is raised, really, how much choice do we actually have in choosing our friends? Or is there something genetic that's predisposing us to choose our friends?
And what did this study find? It looked at particular groups of people, is that right?
This is a very well done study that, as you said, is presented in the PNAS this week. And it looked at two of the largest longitudinal studies done in the country. And they examined 9,000 people and charted them over friendship networks. And they examined 6 genes. They picked out 6 genes. And they found that 2 genes in particular, one that is a predisposition to drinking or alcoholism, and another gene that is associated with a tendency to be more open with people, definitely is linked in terms of who we choose as our friends.
Fascinating. So in the case of the group of people who had a drinking issue or alcoholism or a predisposition to it, did they tend to choose similar friends?
They did. So if you had the gene that predisposed you to drinking, then you were drawn toward people who also had that gene, so that you would choose them out to be friends. And the interesting thing about that is it then does affect your behavior. So if you were to preferentially associate with others who may have a tendency toward excessive drinking, and you're all together, you're probably going to have excessive drinking. Whereas the other gene, the gene of openness, they found that people that had that gene, that they were going to have a more open personality, were actually drawn to people who were not similar to them genetically, that they were drawn to people that maybe were not as open and had a personality that was a little bit more closed off.
Interesting. Now, they looked at this in one direction but not in the other, because I'm curious whether it may have been that people who had an open personality were more sought out by people who had a more closed personality and were therefore befriended by those people rather than vice versa.
Right, and they saw that in other studies as well, when they looked at that genes that may be predisposing someone to be a leader or take on a leadership role. They weren't necessarily drawn toward others that wanted to be leaders or had a disposition to be in the leadership role. They were drawn toward people that maybe were more followers, which would make sense and sort of explain what we see in behavior.
Absolutely. It's fascinating. So this idea that we choose our friends based on whether we like them or not, unlike family, it's sort of interesting because we are genetically related to our family if they are our biological family. So, you know, it just shows you that not all genes are created equal.
No, and we don't have as much choice as you may think. And I think the more we understand about genetics, and the more they look at different genes and gene associations within friendship networks, they may see more and more that, you know, maybe we are more genetically compatible with our best friend that we choose than our biological sister in terms of potential personality traits. Obviously, all of the genes were more similar biologically to our relatives, but we're really drawn towards certain people for genetic reasons.
Now, did the study go on to look at whether or not we should necessarily hang out with these friends that we're drawn to?
That's true. It discussed that. It was something that they discussed in the study, especially with the drinking, that it obviously will influence your behavior if you're preferentially choosing to hang out with people that maybe are drawn toward bad habits. Similarly, they suggested and discussed tendencies genetically to be fit and athletic, so that people that are fit and athletic and have genetic tendency to eat healthy, go to the gym and work out, they may be drawn toward people that have those same tendencies, and that's a positive thing, whereas with the drinking, associating with sort of the bad crowd or a crowd that influence you in the wrong way is not a good thing. But if we have genetic tendency toward that, it's obviously a very difficult thing to overcome.
Right. So if you have good tendencies or healthier tendencies, hanging out with people that continue those tendencies is a good thing. But on the other hand, you may want to try and stay away from people who bring out the bad tendencies in you. Right. Now, what other traits did the study look at besides alcoholism and openness and healthy gym going?
Well, those are the big ones. They
Okay.
looked at 6 genes in particular, but the ones that they really honed in on, that they showed a true association with friendship networks, were the openness, the tendency to being more open, having a more open personality, and the tendency toward alcoholism.
Fascinating.
Those 2 genes out of the 6 were the ones that they showed really had a connection within the friendship network.
Right. Fascinating study, Dr. Boyle. Thank you so much for telling us all about it. And for more information on this topic and others, log on to the health page at abcnews.com.